Hi, everybody. Hi, Keren
Hi,
Brown.
Nicole.
Hi. Keren is here with me from wisewomanleading.com. She and I are friends and colleagues. We've done a lot of work together. I'm Nicole Moen of gatheringroots.ca and wovenrootspress.ca, in case you don't know that already. And I have an upcoming course, 3 actually, called Write Your Roots. How to acknowledge lands where you are and where you're from. Should really totally commit that to memory. Um, and Keren had some questions for me. And so I said, why don't we hop on a Zoom call and we'll record me answering those questions so that I can share it with you all. And so here we are, bit of an experiment. Honestly, haven't ever done this before. So bear with us, bear with me. Keren's far more versed in these things than I am. But I'm getting into it myself. So I'm going to start with a bit of a land acknowledgement. I'll keep it super short in this context. Sometimes I do long ones. So I personally am here on the lands, the home of the Lekwungen people, south tip of Vancouver Island. And Keren is on.
I'm in Takaronto or Toronto, and it's the home of many different nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples.
Thank you. Yeah, and this land was shared. It was very rich in resources here. Um, um, the Sinchothan speaking, the Sonic people from the peninsula would be here. Um, Folks from across the water would be here, Lomi, etc. Suk Nation people, uh, Hulkaminam speaking, Kapchison people from farther north. Um, Yeah, so uh, the Chalmers probably would come down. People traveled. The oceans were the waterways and shared resources, salmon, herring, um, food like camas bulb here, which was a rich carbohydrate um, that was eaten and tended. It wasn't just randomly growing; it was tended by the people here. Lekwungen means people of the herring, people of the smoked herring, or land of the people of the smoked herring. It's curious to me that it's the same word for both. At some point, there is a an infix, I believe, not suffix or prefix, but an infix that means land. But at some point, it was dropped, and the same word means the same thing.
So, why don't we just dive in because
Ah,
it's clear that you're very knowledgeable and you have great reverence
mm,
for uh, the land, the peoples, the indigenous ways, and all of that. And obviously, that's part of why you are wanting to put together an offering like these that you are. And so maybe that's a good place to start, is just what's the context behind this
mm.
offering?
Yeah, I realized at some point that I've helped a lot of people write land acknowledgements and thought I could offer that more widely. I hesitated though, honestly, because especially to charge for a course, just to be totally upfront and frank about that, because isn't that appropriation? Shouldn't that be someone who's indigenous to the land be paid for that? Yes, absolutely. Like that is a thing that should be done in every case where that's possible. It's often not possible. And um, so it's why I've sought permission from the people here to help and from other Indigenous people who are supporting my work. They think I'm a little crazy, but um, but they support it. And one of the things I know about what's real for people here, the Lekwungen people here, the Sonic people, Hulkaminam people, or Cowichan people, um, is they're swamped. there are so few people who have capacity to work for us settlers, the people who can do, and they're just absolutely filled with um, what is needed. And when I asked permission to do it, I was given yes, please, like please, please go and educate those white guys because we don't have time to do it all for everybody. That was
Yeah.
one of the responses, and there are other reasons. So, am I acting appropriately, or is it appropriation? I mean, people could argue that, and they might have good reasons. I don't know, but I believe I'm acting appropriately from, and have sought, uh, like I said, permission and so on to do
Yeah. Well, the name, maybe you were about to say this, so if I
it.
preempted you,
Good.
but the name or the subtitle of the offering kind of also gives us a clue that it's something a little bit more and different.
Yes, yes, yes. So we start with it's a three-part offering. There's sort of an introductory, just sort of taking an overview of the territory, and then we're going to get deeper, and then we'll sort of create something with our hands. Those are the three parts. But so yes, we start with the land acknowledgement of where you are. Um, but that's just the starting place. And not that it isn't extremely important, it is extremely important. And certainly here, virtually every event that I go to starts with some kind of a land acknowledgement. It's usually just here we are on the unceded territory of the Lekwungen, which is great and true. But um, it's lip service, even if they're not meaning it to be. I mean, it's where I started. I started this like 12, 14 years ago now, and that's what I said. Um, but over time, and working with the Songhees Nation directly for 3 years on contract and otherwise, besides that, um, learned a lot more. And one of the biggest piece um, is to stand in your own lands. And this as part of a decolonization process, if you want to call it that. There are reasons to and reasons not to, but um, to dig deep enough into your own ancestry to find out where your people were indigenous to, and to learn more about who they were, what their culture was like, what food did they eat, who were the elders, what were their ways of thinking of the cosmos and spiritual connections with other realms, like how did they do that, what did they do, what were the tools they used, what, you know and they would be different depending on how far back you go in time. So there's it's rich. I have 5 lines of ancestry, so it's a lot. Often I have to just choose one and stick with that um, for a long time to get anywhere with it. um, so that is what the bulk of what Write Your Roots is about. It is about writing your own roots. It's like you're the roots where you're rooted right now. So that's why it's for people of um, say European ancestry. You could have ancestry elsewhere as well. It doesn't have to be European, but that you're not living there. You're living in North America, or somewhere else, or you could be a North American living in Europe or something like that. But you can do the work from anywhere. Um, but that's so it's for people who aren't on their own lands anymore. They're not living the cultures they would have if they were still indigenous to those lands.
Yeah. And so that, for me begs the question, and I have ideas, and I'm sure you have ideas as well. If someone were to say, what's important about this? Why should I take the time and care to do this work? What would you say?
Well, as we speak, LA is burning. As we speak, I mean, I can't even talk about this stuff without crying. Wars are being fought either on land or over the airwaves, over the internet, over the Wi-Fi's, over the all the the magical, if you want to say, unseen ways that people are connecting now, like we are right here, right now. And I'll just add, as far as that goes, that there's a piece in a land acknowledgement that I often do is like, we're here. This space isn't grounded. It isn't from we were not on a land in this sort of internet-y space. However, in order to do this, um, it requires extraction from people's lands, often sort of in the backwoods and not very overt. It requires land extraction from lands in various ways that may or may not have the permission of the people whose land it is. I heard there's a fellow, I won't say his name, but who's building a huge, I might get this wrong, lithium facility in Texas. I think it's lithium, um, for creating technological things. And the water extraction in order to do it is off the scale in a land that has experienced several years of drought in a row. And so by tying in to our own ancestral ways, starting to learn how our own people lived on the land in a way that the land could sustain, in a way that the land could sustain us and all life on the land. So birds and plants and animals and rocks and waters and trees and everything that from I can't think of an indigenous perspective that doesn't include that, but everything has life and is part of us. I could call plantain an ancestor of my own because I've imbibed plantain, and so have my ancestors. Or archangelica, with northern, it's a circumboreal plant, and so my northern family in Norway would have eaten archangelica, so that's an ancestor too. And it was considered like all my relations literally means all of these things.
Mm.
So it's land, it's relations, and so when we in this time of forgetting those things, um what we've created is an end game for the life on the planet. You can't keep turning living things into cash, um living things into dead things into cash, sorry, that's the sequence, um forever. At a certain point, the living things are just like, aren't it aren't enough to actually sustain our life. We have to have water, we have to have living food, um and so do the plants and the animals and all these things. I'm not saying anything people don't know already, but what I'm hoping, and what's also talked about in this book with my zillion stickies because it's that good, um you know Tyson and Yunkaporta's Sand talk how indigenous thinking can save the world. That's what I'm talking about. Tyson is indigenous to various places in Australia, um, and has a really beautiful way of talking about it.
Mm. So I'm hearing themes like remembering and reverence and coming back into kind of a place of um, our own knowing on a personal level, but then how that impacts, if we have this reverence and this respect for all of the lands and all of the beings, and we realize the interconnectedness of all, that's what we need to go forward to be able to correct, course correct, I guess, right? What's going on in this
Yeah,
time.
in my own lineage, I'm learning a lot about Old Norse ways and so on, and the main type of ceremony is called a blot. And in a blot, the main action is reciprocity. You always give at least as much as you get, and um, so offerings, um, libations are also called. um, to the land you're doing it on, to the guides, spirits, gods, allies, whatever you work with, um, offerings to them as well, and to the beings of the land. Um, and we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it breaks my heart. I was thinking this morning, there's constructing a number of sort of condo buildings near me, and we live on, and there's a lot of bedrock. So in order to build these buildings, they think they need to literally dynamite the stone to be able to put a parkade under the building. And every time I hear it, it's not only does it sound like a bomb going off nearby, because it kind of is, and it scares me, it also breaks my heart that they haven't asked the stone if it's okay. They haven't asked the people on whose land they're blasting the stone if it's okay. And if they do say it's okay, like, what do they have to offer? What is the equivalent offering back to the land for destroying part of the land? We don't ask those questions.
No, we don't think to ask those
No,
questions.
no.
So
So
bringing it back to the offering and the three parts that you have, what will people kind of hear? What will they do? How will they be? Kind of, if you can kind of give us an overview of what to
yeah,
expect.
well, I'm calling it a course. It's got three parts. There's structure, there's, for admin, back end, and receiving the money, and putting this onto the interwebs, so people can show up from various parts in the world. I mean, that's kind of beautiful magic. Um, there's that, right? It's the three parts I mentioned before, that it's like overview for the first part and just sort of getting your feet wet, or wading deeper if you're already getting your feet wet. There will be people like that as well. Um, and then the second part is just digging deeper in order to do part three, where you create something. It could be music, it could be leather work, it could be some kind of fiber arts, or crocheting, or sewing, or whatever, or smithing, silversmithing. I've done a little bit of silversmithing myself, and the others as well. And to have something material, um, often material things carried memory, and you have memory in your hands, you have memory in your cells, and we're not used to sort of pulling that out of ourselves. Or it might not be a pulling so much as an allowing it to show up. I can't tell you how many things I've tried to do craft wise, where it's like it just came, it was easy, it was like it was in me already. I mean, I know my mother and my grandmothers, um, both, all three of them did a lot with their hands. So I know for sure from them, but it's much, much deeper than that. Um, where is it? Here it is. Um, so part of my, um, it's an imperfect thing, but I'm trying to not offer this as a course, but as a doorway, a portal into a type of knowing, into a journey or a pilgrimage, or whatever you want to call it, into your own roots. And I can't tell you how to do that or what to do, but I can share my own stories. I can offer up a structure through which to do it, to get started, and to start to look at some things. It's not always easy. I mean, there are things that show up when you start to dig like that, that you may or may not want to know. And so there can be a lot of healing in sitting with that, which I can also help with in another context, working one-to-one with people. But um, yeah, 'cause people discover there's been murders or intermarriage that they wish wasn't there, or like there's, other kinds of violence or abuse or whatever, like that shows up, as well as the gifts and the beauty and the just the joy of knowing, or the heartbreak of knowing. I mean, I've experienced that too. So just in terms of the course, I created something that partly comes out of this, partly comes out of teaching from classes I've been taking with my own guides. Is I created a memory stick. Here's the memory stick right here. Um, and it, they're items that exist, archaeologically around the world, like this, and they hold memory for the people who created them. And so for me, this is the first part, for Write Your Roots, of acknowledging the lands here. This is the second part of Write Your Roots for acknowledging the lands you're from. And then this is the combination here. And then this is me personally on the back, holding space for this to happen. And these are runes. These runes I found in the landscape here. It's a practice that I'm learning to do, from one of my teachers, where you sit on the land and you see what runes, and it spells, if you will, different ways of using the word spells. Um, Weavers, and this spells weavers in Elder Futhark runes, and then this is kind of a combination. And so weavers is the structure, trying to step outside of a Western way of organizing materials. I created this, and the acronym weavers kind of showed up. I can't remember how or where or whatever, as a way of sort of structuring the material, where each letter stands for certain ways of diving in. So, like W, for example, is wisdom, wonder, and wanderer. And so, what were the what was the wisdom that comes out of the elders and the lands here? And and then eventually, when we get to that part, what's the wisdom comes out of your own ancestry? And what role did wonder play in both contexts? What role did wander play? Like, were there pilgrimage? Were there journeys? Like, did people migrate? Like, what what's there? And probably the most important part of weavers is the first E, which is experience and environment. And then so environment starts to get into land and what is land. So after an introduction, we'll use the weavers as the organizing um, structure of the course. Did I answer,
Brilliant.
did I answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Yay.
Uh, we could obviously go on and in
Yes.
great depth about this, and the best way is for us to join you on
Yeah.
this journey in your
So
beautiful offerings.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Um, yeah, so the course, uh, it's 6 weeks, 2 weeks off, 6 weeks, 2 weeks off, and then 3 weeks, for part three. And it starts mid-February, and it's Saturday mornings from 10 to noon, 10 to noon Pacific time, so Vancouver, Canada time. So you can convert to your own um, time zone. That's the word. I get into this stuff, and it's like I enter a different realm when I start talking about it. And it's like, then I have to come back to like, okay, numbers, time. Yeah.
Maybe we should call it land zone instead of time zone.
I love that. Yeah. 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 So, everyone out there listening, I hope you can join. I hope you feel called to join. Happy to answer any and every question you have about it. The best way to reach me is on my website, gatheringroots.ca. There's a contact page there. You can send me an email, and or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook for a while. Or actually, better is through Substack, which is where I'm doing more and more, and I'm subtracting myself from the socials, as they exist still. So my Substack is called On Roots, Poetry, and Pilgrimage. Um, at Gathering Roots is the handle. Um, yeah, so jump in anywhere there, ask any of your questions, and yeah, also register. You can register through my website at gatheringroots.ca. You go into the workshops page, and you'll find the links to click through to register.
Awesome.
Did we cover everything, Karen? Did we answer
I
every
think we did.
question? Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to leave people with?
It's tricky, because I know again from my work with elders and the folks at Songhees and you and so many of my teachers that it's there are things we don't call oneself. You don't call yourself an elder. You don't call yourself an ally. You don't call yourself a healer. You don't call yourself a crone, which we both are. Yay, crones. Um, we don't, these are things that are bestowed by other people or not. If people see those things in us, then it is absolutely their privilege to their right to call us those things and to um, step forward and ask questions or whatever the thing is. And so it feels awkward to me to show up as somebody who deigns to teach this stuff, you know.
Mm,
Um, but it's also my responsibility through these traditions is you don't hoard knowledge. If you are a knowledge keeper, a wisdom keeper, which is something else I wouldn't ever call myself, um, what the job is a responsibility. Here, um, when you're blanketed with a name, if you're Lekwungen or Wasanic, it comes with a list of responsibilities, of skills that you're supposed to teach, of whatever you're a holder of. If it's language, you must teach language. You're responsible for attending certain lands, maintaining certain songs and dances and masks and regalia. It's a long list of things that you're responsible for to pass along to the next generation. Two, um, it's a big deal to be given a name. I was recently given a name by teachers of mine. Um, and like it often in various indigenous traditions, you don't share it. You carry it, you wear it, and you do what you're supposed to do under it. Um, but yeah, so it's similar to that. And and this is my name, which in symbol, which is uninterpretable to anybody else. But it means something to me, and it gives me some ground to stand on to do this. Yeah.
beautiful. Well,
Thank you, everybody, for hanging in, listening to our ranging conversation. And thank you, Keren.
thanks, Nicole. Thank you for the offering.
You're most welcome. And I look forward to sitting with everybody and holding space for people to do their work.